Hello everyone, today I'll be bringing you my 2021 disc golf in the bag. Let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start off with my favorite part of the bag, my putters. I have the most putters, I throw my putters the most often, and they're the most important part of my game. So we'll go ahead and start with the putters that I use for putting inside of the circle, and that is the classic blend Wardens. These are actually brand new. I got these today, and I've been beating them in. I've been putting with the Warden for a while now, and I needed some fresh new putters, and so I have classic blend Wardens for all my inside the circle needs. These are very straight, they have a beadless profile, and I aim straight at the center of the basket, and if I have a clean release, it just goes right in, and the beadless profile helps me with that clean release. Very straight putter, and I highly recommend the Warden for someone who has not tried it yet. I also have a prime Warden, and this is used for all my jump putts, short up shots, and understable shots off the tee. I've been using this as my main putting putter since October, and so it's nice and beat in. It's got a lot of glide, and it's decently understable when I throw it. So this is great for jump putts because it has a lot of glide, and if I aim straight at the chains, it'll go straight for a longer period of time. So the Warden is something I use a lot. It's a great disc, and the Prime Burst is actually really good for my jump putt. I also bag another Warden only for throwing, and that's a Prime Burst Warden. This blue one here I use for throwing off the tee and up shots. This is great for releasing it on some hyzer and having it slowly flip up and go very, very straight. The Warden's one of the straightest putters I've thrown, and it's nice to have, a consistent, understable shot if I throw it flat. So the Warden's very workable. Highly recommend it to players of all skill types, and I have 4 of them in the bag as kind of my main putter. So we'll get on to my throwing putters that I only use for shots, up shots, and shots off the tee. We'll start out with the utility disc. This is the Prime Burst Gavel. This is only used for in the woods, get out of trouble shots. This is a beginning putter for newer players, but I've kept it in the bag because it's very useful for understable shots. If I get off the fairway in the woods, I'll use the gavel to release on hyzer through a small gap, and it'll flip up and turn over. No matter how much hyzer I put on it, it's understable enough that it'll turn over when I need it to, backhand and forehand even. If I need just to get out of jail free shot, the gavel does a great job of that. Very specific situations is when the gavel comes out, but when I need it, I can rely on it for that understable flight path, and it's actually a really good beginner putter. This is one of the first putters I used when I started, and I'm still using it today. So Prime Burst Gavel. Next up is the best disc in my bag, my favorite disc in the bag, and the disc I throw the best in my bag, and that is the Opto Gauntlet by Latitude 64. This is my main throwing putter, and I've tried so many different putters for throwing and putting, and this is the best throwing putter I've ever felt. It has a nice tall profile, so it fits well perfectly in my hand. It's got a bead, which adds some extra stability. It has 0 turn and 1 fade, so it's point and shoot. I can release it on hyzer, it'll hold. I can release it flat, it'll go so straight with a very slight fade at the end, and I can release it on anhyzer, and it'll hold the whole way. This is the most workable disc that I've thrown as a putter, and it's super good. It feels great. The Opto Classic is super durable. I got this at my first PDGA tournament, so it's very special to me, and I use it so much on the course. I'll throw this maybe up to 10 times per round. Just a great disc, the Opto Gauntlet. Next I have a soft Marshall by Dynamic Discs. I don't really know how old this is. I actually found it at my home course, but it's soft plastic, so it's very bendy. In the summertime, I can fold it all the way over multiple times. It's pretty crazy how foldy and soft this disc is. But this comes out in specific situations where I need the disc to land soft, and I don't want it to have any ground action whatsoever. If there's water around the green, or if there's a slope to OB, or if there's a drop off right behind the basket, the Marshall's a great option because it sits right next to the basket. It's pretty much a point and shoot disc at this point. When you get it, it's a little bit overstable, but this one is pretty old, and so I'll use it for, just anhyzer shots or straight shots, just up shots that I don't want to move when they hit the ground. The next disc is an S-Line P3X from Discmania. I use the Gauntlet probably around 70% of my up shots, and the other 30%, most of the time you'll see me using the S-Line P3X. This is a more overstable option to the Gauntlet, and I need it because when I throw this flat, it has a reliable, consistent fade at the end. When I throw it on hyzer, it will never flip. It will always hold the hyzer the whole way, and if I throw it on anhyzer, it'll work to fight out the entire flight, and generally fight out to flat, maybe even fade at the end as well. I use this for if it's windy, if I'm playing an open course, or if I need it to hold a hyzer or have a consistent fade when I release it flat and not go straight for the whole flight, but also have a fade at the end. So the S-Line P3X from Discmania is one of the best additions to my bag. Noah Cronin actually recommended it to me on his YouTube channel, and it's been a staple in my bag ever since. It's just an overall great throwing putter, S-Line P3X. Next I have a BT Hard Harp from Westside Discs, and this is strictly for all my forehand up shots. If you guys are new to the channel, I'm left-handed, and so being a lefty on the course, you need forehand discs for all your different speeds, all the way up from putters to distance drivers. So I'll use this inside of 250 feet for all types of shots. I'll use this on pure hyzers. I'll throw it flat and it'll go very straight, maybe turn, but always fade. And then I'll even throw this on some long anhyzer shots that it'll hold the whole way and flatten out at the end. It's a very usable forehand disc. It's essential for someone like me who's left-handed or someone who's forehand dominant. I'd recommend the Harp. It's just a great forehand approach disc. I use it a lot on the course, and it's really helped improve my game. So this is the BT Hard Harp. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and move on to mid-ranges. I don't throw very many mid-ranges. I only have 3 in the bag because I prefer my putters. I love putters. I throw them the most. But I do have 3 mid-ranges in the bag. We'll go ahead and start with the most understable, which is a Prime Burst Truth. Just a regular Truth. I've had this in the bag for a while now, probably around 8 months. And this thing is very, very understable. I've beat it up. It's kind of morphed. It's not even flat anymore. It's got kind of a lift in the right side of the disc. And it's very beat up. You can see kind of along the edge. It's nice and torn. But that's usable, and that makes the disc unique. And it's actually a very good woods disc. I use this primarily in the woods for hyzer flip to turnover shots. Being a lefty, as I said earlier, having a reliable turnover disc is also really important. And so having something that's definitely a bit longer than some of my putters and can go farther with a lot of glide that it's gained from me beating it up. The Truth is just a reliable mid-range for me on the understable slot, and I use it a lot, so in the woods especially. So the Prime Burst Truth. Now a step up from the Prime Burst Truth is the Prime Burst Emac Truth, and the difference is that the Truth has a turn of -1 and a fade of 1, and Emac Truth has a turn of 0, fade of 2. So it's a bit more stable than the Truth, but the difference is this one is also beat in, but it's not as beat in as my regular Truth. So I'll throw this on hyzer, it'll flip up, it'll turn, and it'll fade. That's pretty much the standard shot I'll use this for. Some situations I'll throw it on an extreme hyzer and it'll flip up to flat and fade. In other situations I'll throw it with a little bit of hyzer and it'll flip and turn. If I need a more reliable turnover disc than the Truth and I need it to turn over smooth, not as fast, I'll go to the Emac Truth. And this is probably my most used mid-range. It's my go-to mid-range. It's very point and shoot at this point since I beat it in. You know, hyzer, it'll flip up, fade, flat, it'll turn, little hyzer, it'll flip up. So I can do a lot of different things with the Emac Truth. This is pretty much the staple mid-range from Dynamic. If you haven't tried it out, you should, because it's just that good. So Emac Truth. And then the final disc in the bag is actually a pretty interesting one. It's a Rock X3. And I'm looking to actually replace this with a Verdict from Dynamic Discs, but the Verdict is so popular, it's always sold out. So I do have a Star Rock X3, and this is just my overstable mid-range. It's reliable, and it does what I want it to do. It'll hold a hyzer the whole way, and it won't flip. If I release it flat, it'll go very straight with a consistent fade, and if I throw it on anhyzer, it'll kind of hold the anhyzer, flatten out, and finish at the end. So it doesn't come out of the bag often because I don't really need an overstable mid-range too much of the time, but when it does, I use it. It's very usable, and I like the Rock X3 for that slot. So it's got a very similar feel to the Emac Truth with the bead on it. All my mid-ranges have beads. I like that for throwing. Yeah, Star Rock X3 for the overstable slot for the mid-range. Everyone needs kind of an overstable disc they can rely on the slower speed, and Rock X3 is that disc for me. So that is it for the mid-ranges. We'll go ahead and move on to the fairway drivers. Alright, moving on to the fairway drivers, we'll go ahead and start with my most understable, which is a Fusion Burst Maverick. This is a beast of a disc. It's got decent dome to it, shallow rim, great feel with the Fusion Burst plastic. And I've had this one since April, and it's a great understable disc. For beginners, it'll be a nice, good intro to a fairway driver. It'll be nice and straight, and it'll even be stable for some newer beginners. But for me, it's really good for that hyzer flip to turnover shot. So this is one of my go-to woods discs. I use it all the time in the woods off the tee for a reliable hyzer flip to very straight shot, or I can release it a little bit more flat, and then it'll flip up and turn, and that's really useful. And if I put it on a good hyzer and I get full flight out of it, it'll flip up and barely turn. And it's really interesting to see how this disc flies. A lot of Mavericks are unique on how they flip, and it's really cool to watch these fly in the woods. So if you're new to the game and you want to try out a fairway driver, the Maverick, and if you're experienced and you need a great reliable turnover disc, it's great. So Fusion Burst Maverick. Alright, now next in my fairway lineup is a Biofusion Getaway. And this is a more stable Maverick. It's very similar in the profile. It's got a wider rim, it's got good dome, and this actually has a turn of 0.5 and a fade of 3. So this is more stable. I'll release this flat, and then it'll go very straight with a fade. Now, if I want to, I'll be able to hyzer this the entire way if I release it on hyzer. And one of my favorite things to do is release it on anhyzer and have it kind of just hold the whole way and eventually flatten out at the end. It's super fun to watch that fly. This is a nice stable fairway when it's windier and I need a straight flight. The Getaways where I go, and on a calm day I can always rely on it for a straight flight with a consistent fade. So the Biofusion Getaway, one of my favorite discs to throw. I'm learning to like it even more as it beats in and gets even straighter. I'm going to continue to beat it in, and it'll add glide, add distance, and this disc is super good for that straight shot. So the Getaway. Alright, next I have two Felons. The first one here is this Lucid dyed Felon, and this one I've had since April, the same time as the Maverick, but this disc does not fly like a Felon anymore. If I rip this flat, it's going to go dead straight, and then it'll have a fade at the end. The difference, this is very similar to my Biofusion Getaway actually in the way it flies, but the difference is that this Felon has a harder fade than the Getaway. People always talk about that Felon fade, and it's very true. No matter what Felon you have, it'll generally have a hard fade at the end. But I've been learning to like this for straight forehands because I can put a lot of spin on the disc for my forehand. I really like it for that slot, and it's great for just a straight to stable shot. It's a bit more stable than the Getaway right now, but the feel of the Felon is ideal for the backhand, and it's amazing for the forehand as well. So the Felon, probably my go-to fairway at the moment. I can use it for very stable shots. I can use it for straight shots with this gem of a disc. This one's a really cool die, and I got it for my birthday, and if I don't lose it, I'll never take it out of the bag. So this Felon is super good. Now, since I throw that Felon so much, I needed to get just a regular Felon. So I have a Lucid Felon right here. I got at my first PDGA tournament along with the Gauntlet, and this is a super board flat top Felon. This is very overstable. I'll throw it flat and it'll just start hyzering immediately. I love it. I love the consistency of a Felon. For the forehand, it's a bit straighter, but it still has that consistent fade. I can't get near as far with this Felon as I can with the other Felon, but that's why you bag a Felon, is for consistency. It'll always fade. It'll always hyzer. And the Lucid Felon feels great. It's one of my favorite discs, so I'll never take it out of the bag. It's just a great, reliable disc. That's why I have two of them. And then this next slot is really interesting. It's what I call a hybrid driver. It's in between a fairway and a distance driver, and what fills that slot is probably the most underrated disc ever, maybe, the Latitude 64 Musket. This disc is absolutely incredible. If you've ever met me or played with me, you've heard me talk amazing things about this disc, and that's because the feel in the hand is unlike any other. It feels perfect. It has that rim width of a fairway driver. It is a 10 speed. It's got negative 0.5 turn and 2 fade. It's very straight, and this one I've actually had for about a year now, so it's a very seasoned in, and this is more understable. So I'll release it on hyzer, it'll flip up, turn, and fade. And if I release it with less hyzer, it'll be a nice turnover disc for me. I'm looking into getting a fresh Opto musket so I can have that consistent flight. What I like to use a fresh musket for most of the time is that flat release to straight flight. It absolutely takes all the guesswork out of trying to flip it to flat. You can just rip it flat and it'll go straight. That's why I like the musket. This is a great disc. Not many people throw it, and it's definitely one of the staples. If the Gauntlet is my favorite disc, this is my second favorite, the Musket. Absolutely incredible disc. I love it, and everyone should at least give this a try if you're into disc golf. So the Musket, absolutely incredible disc. All right, moving on to distance drivers, my final slot in the bag. We'll start out with the most understable, keep the pattern going, and that is the Elusive Captain. This is actually 168 grams, so it's a little bit lighter, and I've actually been using this for rollers. There are a few holes in my area where a roller is actually a viable play, and the Captain is something that I found is a really good roller. It's got a pretty good edge for rolling. It's very understable, so I can kind of rip it with a bit of anhyzer, and it'll turn into a roller. I'll put it on some cut angle. It'll stand up, turn over. Gets really good distance. I actually threw my farthest throw ever with this disc. I threw a 455-foot roller with the Captain. I just ripped it out there. It stood up perfectly, and it actually stayed in balance. So it was pretty cool to see that. The Captain I used to use for some hyzer flip shots in the woods, but as I beat it up and hit more trees, it got pretty understable. And as my musket continued to beat up, the musket eventually overtook the spot that the Captain uses. But as I continue to grow in the game, and as I continue to throw rollers, the Captain is something that'll help develop that part of my game. It's not used much, but it's very good practice, and as I continue to use that, there are some open courses in the area where a roller would really help. So the Captain's going to really teach me that part of the game, and I'm really excited to start learning it. So that is the Elusive Captain. Alright, next disc is pretty new. I got it for Christmas, actually. It is the Lucid Sheriff, and this is a disc that I've been wanting to try out for a very long time, kind of as a go-to distance driver for me. It's really new, so it's a bit more stable than I expected. I can actually release this pretty flat. It may turn a little bit, but it'll go pretty straight with a fade. On a hyzer, you know, it may flip a little bit at this point, but it's a great distance driver for me personally. For my arm speed, I'll actually, you know, rip this flat and it'll turn and it'll fade, and that's what I really like to use this for. I really like those discs that are naturally straight. I can't wait to start beating this in more to where I can get a consistent hyzer flip out of it. I feel like once I start beating this in and get it and eventually achieve some more glide with this Sheriff, it'll be one of the farthest flying discs in my bag. It is actually the farthest flying disc in my bag. I threw this 424 feet in my distance video, which is the longest air shot I've measured, so that was pretty cool. But I'm super excited about the Sheriff. Feels great in the hand, great for those just distance shots. The next disc here is actually my main distance driver before I got the Sheriff, and is probably still my main distance driver, and that is a blank canvas Fusion Raider. The Raider is something that I got to initially fill the overstable distance driver slot in my bag, because you know, a few months ago there was no way I'd ever be able to flip this thing. But as I've learned and gotten better, my form has gotten better, my reach back has gotten better, my arm speed has gotten faster, I'm now able to get full flight out of this Raider, and it's really fun to watch. I'll put it out on hyzer, it'll flip, it'll turn, and it'll fade. And where this disc really shines is on forehands for me. I'll release this flat, and it'll hold that turn and fade out at the end. And if I release it with hyzer, it'll pop up to flat, turn a little bit, and fade. The Raider feels really good for the forehand. The Fusion plastic is really good. I like Fusion a lot, and so the Raider has been my go-to distance driver, and paired with the Sheriff, I feel like I'll be able to get a lot more life out of this, so I'm not having to use this for backhand and forehand. A lot of the time for all my distance shots, I'll be able to kind of split the work with the Sheriff. So this will be pretty much my main forehand disc. As I said earlier, being lefty, if I need max distance with the forehand, I'm pulling out the Raider. So overall, great disc. Alright, final distance driver here. Brand new addition to the bag along with the Sheriff. This is a Biofusion Defender, and this thing is overstable. I needed something that wouldn't flip on me. Now that I've been able to flip the Raider, I needed something that I could just rely on spike hyzers, flex shots, especially flex forehands. So the Defender has filled that spot. This is a great disc. I've actually been throwing it quite a bit. Feels good in the hand, and as I beat this thing up and it starts flipping, this will be maybe one of the best discs in the bag, best discs I've ever thrown when it becomes more understable. But as of right now, there's no shot I'm flipping this thing. If I release this flat on a backhand, it immediately starts hyzering. I love throwing flex forehands with it. That's pretty much what my main use of it is now. But if there's any headwind, I recently faced like 35-mile-an-hour headwinds in Kentucky, and the Defender actually worked perfect for me in those situations. So very overstable, very reliable, and that's actually all the discs in my bag. Other than that, I have a Westside Discs Mini that I use, and this is the Latitude 64 Core Pro bag. It's brand new, got it for Christmas. It's pretty sweet. It's got all the space I need. I can even fit more discs than what I have. It's got a putter pouch up here. I've got this pocket in here where I keep my towel. I've got a bunch of side pockets where if I had a tournament, I could keep like a rule book or a pencil. I got everything I need in this bag, so it's pretty sweet. But that is it for me in the bag for 2021. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed these types of videos, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and actually if you have any questions or if you want to buy any of these discs, just leave a comment and I'll link you directly to the website or point you in the right direction. So that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.